Hi, it's Leslie from Silver Lining Knitting here. I thought I would do a quick video and tell you a little bit about why I'm using the KISS loom for most of my work. So in this video I'm going to cover the differences between KISS looms and other looms, and why KISS looms are good for these Japanese patterns, and a little bit about how to knit on KISS looms, because I know that that sometimes is a problem for people who've started out on plastic looms.
So the obvious difference between the KISS looms and other looms is the metal pegs. You can also see, if you compare these two, that the gauge is a little bit different. This is a regular gauge KISS loom, and you can see the pins are closer together than the pegs on a plastic loom. KISS does make a larger gauge loom. This is a piece of a dragon loom, and you can see this gauge is pretty close to what you would get on a regular gauge plastic loom. And I know you can get smaller gauge plastic looms that are similar to the regular gauge KISS loom. KISS also makes some fine gauge looms that are even smaller than this. I have one of those. I don't use it all that often. It's a little more difficult to work with because it's such a fine gauge. And for most of the work I'm doing, I find that this is the gauge that I like to use. The small gauge looms I know are good for sock knitting, if that's something you're interested in. The other difference in the KISS loom is the pins. So you have the pegs in the front, and in the back you have a row of pins. And when you're wrapping your yarn, you always have to go behind the pin and in front of the next peg. The reason for these pins is to make the gauge adjustable. On the regular gauge KISS looms, you can see that it's made of actually two pieces of wood, and it comes with these plastic washers that you can put in between the two pieces, and that will spread the pins further away from the pegs and change the gauge a little bit. But even without putting those washers in, just the fact that those pins are there gives you a little more slack in all of your stitches. It makes it easier to keep the stitches a little bit looser, which is important because in these Japanese patterns, if you look at this piece of work, you can see these curved lines of stitches, and the way you get those is by moving the stitches from one peg to the next and knitting. And that's a little bit difficult to do on plastic looms because of this notch at the top of the peg. Makes it a little bit harder to get the stitch off and move it. And it tends to make you knit with a lot of tension in the yarn. Whereas on the KISS looms, you can, it's kind of necessary to have less tension on your yarn. And I'm going to show you how you do that. So when I am doing my regular knit stitches on a KISS loom, I'm going to do about 6 or 7 in a row this way. Works well. So I'm going to wrap 6 pegs. And what you need to do is keep your working yarn taut while you knit. So I've got these 6 stitches, and the new stitch that I've just wrapped is tight because I'm holding on to the working yarn. The stitch underneath is loose, so I pull it out and knit it off. You don't want it to get stuck on the pin back there. And notice as I go, I get plenty of slack from the surrounding stitches. So now I've knitted those 6 stitches. The new stitches are tight. So I'm going to let go of the working yarn and start with the last stitch I knitted and pull some slack on all of those stitches. And then I can just take the fabric in the back and kind of pull it out so that they all lay flat. And I'm going to check to sort of make sure that the tension is pretty consistent between all the stitches. This is something that as you work on these looms, eventually it just becomes second nature. It's not difficult to do, but it does take a little bit of practice and work till you get used to it. I'll show you again. I've wrapped 6 stitches. I pull and knit the old stitch off while I'm keeping the tension on the new stitches tight. Then I let go of the tension and pull some slack through each stitch. Okay? And that's how you get a nice consistent tension on your stitches, and you keep them loose enough that you can move them from peg to peg easily if you need to.
Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below.